Coming up on today's episode of the Real Lives podcast.
The total investment in the product is about $275,000. Of that, about $150,000 to $160,000 is mine. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything in my life. I'd go through it again. Yeah, I think it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. I hesitate to make them believe that I'm a wealthy guy. I'm not. I was bankrupt at the end of the cancer surgery. They talk about the failure solving the fentanyl problem across the United States. In their discussion of the failure components are the things we just talked about: alternative drug and rehabilitative services, tapering methodology that slowly gets a person off of fentanyl. They don't have a clue that I'm out here. Okay, they will in a few weeks.
So today's episode is one of a three-part series of what I call the Opioid Crisis. So today's episode I have on the amazing Neil Jackson. Neil was a former fentanyl addict. He went through treatment for cancer where he was prescribed fentanyl and became addicted to the patch and struggled to get off. And what he managed to do as a result of this was he created a patch called FenBlock, which helps to block the flow of fentanyl into the body so that you can slowly get yourself off of fentanyl or the drug itself. It uses a tapering method so you can apply more of this patch to the fentanyl patch over a course of time so for him, it took him 14 months to get off fentanyl as a result of using this patch. And it's an amazing story. And what he's doing with the drug, with the patch now undergoing FDA approval, he's looking to bring it to market as soon as possible. And I think this patch is going to be a game changer in terms of reducing that number of deaths as a result of fentanyl and drugs of the sort. You know, Neil talks about the money he's put into this product, going through the cancer and, losing his leg as a result of the cancer. And at, 70, I think he's 72 or 74, still pushing to help others and help the families which are affected by fentanyl addiction, the opioid crisis in America. And it's just an incredible story. So if you could, please like, subscribe, share the podcast, and I hope you enjoy this episode with Neil Jackson. You can find all his links down in the description below. So yes, please enjoy this episode. Okay, Neil, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Obviously, we've been talking about getting this done for a little while. So just to start off with, I do the same with everyone when they come on the podcast, and that's just tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm Neil Jackson. I'm a successful living representative of going through cancer surgery and surviving. So I'm real fortunate there. As a result of the cancer surgery, I, like most people, were treated with a high amount of different painkillers, starting with morphine and then ending up with basically a full mix of opioids from hydromorphine, hydrocodone, oxycodone, and fentanyl. So it took me about 7 years of that to one day realize that I was in trouble. I was asking for more and more medication from an unwilling doctor, and we were at points of real contention. And I felt that I was really, abusing his ethos of do no harm. So he was confused and sent it to the point where if he refused my wishes, which he had not for years, I kept growing and growing in use. But we felt that there was we're starting to rub each other the wrong way. And so I decided, among other reasons, that that was one paramount reason, that I needed to change my habits. I started to get off of the oral opioids, and it took me about 7 months of just basically taking the pills and chipping away at them. In other words, reducing the size of the pill. And over a 7-month period of time, I was able to get off of a tremendous amount of oral opioids, which were about 24 milligrams of hydromorphine a day and 36 milligrams of hydrocodone. And so when I got through those dosages, I felt fairly good. But what my next, requirement was, what do I do with this thing I've got as a fentanyl patch? And I had been using that fentanyl patch for 7 years. Um, it was it's prescribed to me at 100 micrograms per hour, which is the largest patch you can find. And I imagine it's the largest globally, European or whatever, whether it's U.S. market or not. And I was sometimes putting two patches on. So I was really, really in trouble. And so I looked at the
Mm.
patch and I said, I can't, I can't fold the patch. It wouldn't stick on my skin. I can't cut it because then the opioids would drain out. The fentanyl would drain out. And so I didn't know really how to get myself off that patch. I didn't want to take a 100 microgram patch and then just ask my doctor to prescribe the 75 microgram, which was the next level down. I thought that the 25 micrograms difference, 25% of my intake, to change that radically would, I didn't know what it would do, but I didn't want to take the risk. So any
Yeah.
impending, bad feelings and withdrawals. So I came up with a way of developing a barrier that would end the flow of a particular volume of the fentanyl. And I started out at 5% coverage, up to 10, 15, 20, and up to 30, 35. And I found myself over a period of 14 months being able to end my use of fentanyl. And I found that everything in my health uh, uh, started to turn around. I had experienced during the time of addiction serious sessions of depression where suicide was very easily contemplated. And that's a scary place to be, especially when you have a
Yeah.
family and grandchildren and things. And so um, those types of emotions, they disappeared. I had been diagnosed with glaucoma. That disappeared. I had been diagnosed with high blood pressure. That disappeared. I had been diagnosed. Well, I had a lot of migraine headaches. They went away. I had serious bouts with nausea. They went away. And so it's been now almost 5 years, and I'm on my way. Uh, One particular thing made me
Mm.
different than say other options, which were alternative drugs. Okay, this is not a pharmaceutical. The barrier has no pharmacological elements in it at all. It's just pure barrier material that I've patented through 3M and out of Minnesota in the U.S. I think everybody's familiar with 3M. So we use
Yeah.
that, and then well, I'm kind of you're. I lost my train of thought.
You were saying there that you got into the patent. You patented with 3M the obviously FenBlock.
Yeah. So what we're able to do is taper a person off of right now off of fentanyl, the prescription side of fentanyl patch, and we can also apply that to the illicit use of fentanyl by alternating, taking it from the illicit needle or illicit drug or liquid or however they're taking their drug and putting it in using the patch, and then augmenting their uh, tapering off by the barrier itself. So
Mm.
we hit both angles of the prescribed side and the illicit side by using the
Yeah.
barrier. So that takes you, depending on the length of use of the drug, will I think equate to the length of your tapering off. If you're on for
Mm.
3 months, it may take you 4 months to get off. But there's no real equation to that. It's going to be between you and your doctor as to
Yeah.
when you're decide to get off.
Yeah. I think it's worth noting for people who don't know that obviously fentanyl is one of the most addictive drugs in the world with 100. It's 100 times more addictive than heroin, if I'm correct in saying that statement. And also, dependency for fentanyl can come within 2 weeks. So, from 2 weeks of being prescribed a drug, you can be addicted to it, which obviously doctors will prescribe for more than 2 weeks. So, dependency can happen in a lot of the population who are prescribed it. And for people who are interested in more about obviously the fentanyl side of it, there's the episode that I have with Brian Townsend, which they can go back and look on, but obviously we'll get into it here. So fentanyl, we know, is one of the deadliest opioids on the planet in terms of it's synthetic. So the cost to produce it in comparison to, say, the opium poppy is a lot less, so they can produce much more of it. But also around 2 or 3 grains of salt worth can kill a person.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is why, in comparison to the other drugs that you're on, like the hydrocodone, it's a much lesser dose. And so, for you, was it when you were on all of these drugs? Which one was having the most effect on you? Was it the fentanyl that was taking the most severe effects, or was it just a combination of everything?
No, I would say certainly a combination, but the one that stood out that really impacted me was the fentanyl patch. And the reason I would pick that is that every 72 hours, that patch needs to be replaced. Okay, because the transdermal flow of the drug has been they prescribe it this way, that it's been exhausted, so you need to replace it with a fresh patch. And when you do that, you've got about a 3 hour window of vulnerability, and that vulnerability falls real quickly, especially at the end of the first full hour of no tape, no titrate, no transdermal flow. Once that's taken off your skin, you really feel that you're missing something. Okay, and then it takes about 2 to 3 hours for that patch to warm up to your skin, for the fentanyl to get into your capillaries, find its way, into your blood system, and then into the opioid receptors and so forth. Okay, so it takes about 3 or 4 hours, and those 3 or 4 hours are a real challenge, and that challenge became somewhat intolerable. So that you would find that I would have one patch on almost all the time, only flipping them out individually on a random basis. Okay, I would take one for 72 hours, and I'd have another one on. Okay, and then I would take this one off, flip it, put a new one on, and wait this one for another day or two. And I'd rotate those. When I disclosed that to my physician, he was extremely upset, very angered. And I think his anger was pointed more directly to me because I was really skirting on the side of almost immediate death. And he
Mm.
couldn't believe I was still living doing that. So he screamed at me and told me to stop it. I listened to him a little bit, but I continued in that process for well over a year until I
Yeah.
realized I had. So yeah, that's the story of the fentanyl patch. It's you're absolutely right. 2 weeks, you become dependent on it, and you just find that the euphoric feeling is gone. You don't have that. I think it's just maintaining the status quo, that you don't have this feeling of withdrawal, and you find yourself in that situation.
I think a good way of describing it is, so the body has a natural state of homeostasis, which allows it to function throughout every day as normal. And what happens is the body's homeostasis is altered as a result of the opioids, where the body becomes so dependent on it that when, like, you look at heroin users when they try and come off, like cold turkey, come off of the drug, they start rejecting everything they try to put in the body. They get hot sweats, cold, they panic, they feel like they're having a heart attack constantly, heart palpitations throughout the day, and it can last for at least a week. In some cases, it can be pretty extreme, can't it? And I guess what is crazy to me with your story in particular is that you had such a severe surgery in terms of for your cancer treatment, and you almost so you it's a surgery where from what I gathered from listening to your episode with Mike Brown, on the opioid matrix, it was a surgery that you could have died during, but
Mm-hmm.
then afterwards you were killing yourself slowly through opioid addiction as well.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I was given uh, before they began the surgery, they gave they told my wife and I that I had a 1,000,001 chance of surviving surgery.
Wow.
And this was the top surgeon in the world at Massachusetts General Hospital, and he was a full, department head plus a full professor and department head at Harvard Medical. So he had done over 1,000 of surgeries of this type of cancer, but he had never contemplated one where mine was in my spine, and they never had that. This was all new to them. It has, and so anyhow, yeah, I had a 1 in a million chance of living. The total was about 40 hours of surgery, and so it was spread over a couple months, but the first go at it was 23 hours.
Wow.
So you can imagine a team of seven chiefs of different departments from the oncology, orthopedic oncology, with which Dr. Hornacek was head of, to plastic surgery. They were all chiefs within the area of Mass General and Harvard. So I had the best. But can you imagine them being there, almost like running an orchestra, or a movie production? Everybody had to be in place at the specific time when Hornacek wanted something cut open or closed or whatever. So a lot of effort went into to operating on me, and I came through it. It took me a week and a half in intensive care and a forced coma for them to stabilize me after surgery. I never knew that, but that's where I was for a week and a half, and then here I am. So I'm real
Mm.
fortunate and real blessed
What?
to be to be still here.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. What was the surgery itself? What was the cancer, and what was the severity of it, so people can get an idea of why it took so long?
It's a cancer called chondrosarcoma, which is cancer of the soft tissue that surrounds our bones. It's incurable and pretty much fatal in certain cases. Where in cancer, normal cancer, you're stage 1, 2, or 3, 4, whatever. And if you ever heard by stage 4 cancer, and it's pretty much lights are out. Mine was on chondrosarcoma. They're in class numbers, the same value, 2, 3, or 4. And when I was, I guess, diagnosed with the cancer, the orthopedic oncologist in Virginia said it was a class 3. And what the guys at Harvard said, they've never seen a class 3 not running into a class 4. And so when they got inside my system, everything pointed to class 4. And so that's why I got such a tough line as to going in, is that this is going to be really hard. The fact is that if any part of that tumor resides after surgery, it'll come back, and it'll come back very aggressive. From their experience, in about 30 days, 60 days, it'll be into your lungs and heart, and it'll shut you down.
Wow.
So that was a balancing act that they told us about. So I figured that either I'm going to die during surgery and not know it, or it's going to be a short run after that. But uh, I came into the whole thing. I think a lot of it is optimistic viewpoints and a strong faith. So, I wasn't at all. I can't remember a day being scared. I was confident that the course was pre-written for me, and however it turned out, that would be the way it is. But I also felt that, and it's kind of a strange thing, but I also felt that I would come through this, and if I did come through it, um, there would be a mission for me and a purpose. But it took 7 years to figure out that mission and purpose was to get off of the uh, opioid addiction. Had nothing to do with this cancer surgery, but it did.
Mm.
So that's what really it turned into a mission right now, is to get this FenBlock product into the service to save the lives of others, because it'll do that.
One question before we get onto the FenBlock itself. Um, are you grateful for having been through this whole process because it's given you that purpose to help every other opioid addict or fentanyl addict to get off the drugs in a way that is safer than the ways that we have right now?
Well, I'll summarize it this way, Ethan. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything in my life. I'd go through it again. So the answer to your question is, uh, you know, yeah, I think it was one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Amazing.
It brought me it brought me closer in my faith. Okay, with Jesus Christ and God. Uh, that's number one. Number two, it brought me closer to my family. And you get up in your. I was 62 when I went for surgery. I'm 75 now. So even at 62, you're looking at, okay, I've done 62 years. And when I was 18, I was drafted for Vietnam service. I failed the physical, thank goodness, I guess, uh, and never got deployed. They sent me home, and but I've been lucky, and I feel like if I had died at 62, I had a lot of friends that died at 18. If I lost my leg as a result of surgery, which happened, there's a lot of kids out there in Iraq, Afghanistan, that are in their 20s that have lost more than their leg. So you kind of have to sit back and say, hey, it's not why me. It's all about you, and all about you and your kids and your grandkids and my grandkids and stuff. That we can, put something together so simple, so safe, uh, that it worked for me, and it's definitely going to. It's got the attention of the FDA in the United States. They've classified to us in conversations they've never seen anything like it, and it's got an opportunity to really work for the good of many people. It'll not only work on what we talk about fentanyl here, but we're real close to saying it can help people on heroin as well.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
So when you were obviously going through this fentanyl addiction and you were figuring out a way to get off it, what was it that pointed you in the direction of this patch that you used to help you come off the drug?
Well, I'm an artist, so I do a lot of painting, and I knew I wanted to reduce the flow, the transdermal flow. So artist tape is much of it is very thin. And so I took a strip of artist tape, put it across the back of my uh, fentanyl patch, and put it on my chest to see what would happen. And after 72 hours pulling it off, it had eaten through the artist tape. And so I said, well, that didn't work. So we got to find something else. So I ended up finding a material that would not have any transdermal flow. It would block the flow of fluids against the skin, and it was a safe material that wouldn't do anything to your skin. It wouldn't, you wouldn't have any abrasions and things like that. So it was all safe. And so I started to, like I said before, I measured it in volume against what was flowing. So you got 100% of the patch on your skin. You drop it down by 5%. Now you're getting a 95% feed, and I daily kept a diary, and I recorded my feelings, and my feelings were fine. So I would go to 10%, 15%, and do the same thing, and I kept, like I said, it took 14 months, and worked my way off. When I got that uh, first material, you could always call it a prototype. So I reached out to the manufacturer of that material, 3M, and we took it from a prototype to a real product, so that their scientists were behind it, and they said, you've got the right material, and we'll help you get through the FDA clearance side.
Amazing. Yeah,
Yeah, it is
it's
amazing.
interesting. It's interesting to look at this as well, because you said there that you wrote down your feelings every day and how it was affecting you coming off the dosage in 5% intervals. How did it affect your family at the peak of the addiction when you were obviously then searching for these alternative routes to get off the drug and to become clean? Because it's not just the individual it affects the family as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of times you'll find your families are kind of like bewildered. In the case of a prescribed opioid, uh, there's a chance that they're not going to challenge that prescribed painkiller. Okay, they're not going to say, like a person who's doing the street fentanyl, you need to quit, Neil. Okay, you need to get help. You need to go here and there and get help. On the prescribed side, they don't know what to do. Um, I was just I was just going along with the flow, and they saw what I didn't see, which was a a relative in decline. I felt like I was doing just fine. All right. But what they would say is, the color of your skin, your eyes, they're just all messed up. Your eyes were yellow and that kind of crap. And of course, I experienced sometimes 27 hours, at least once a month, 27 hours of nausea. All right. A constant nausea. I mean, I wasn't out of the bathroom more than a couple minutes. All right. So, I had a lot of reasons to change my action, but that wasn't the motivation to change my action. What I was one day, I turned on the television and here, and in the U.S. we have a C-SPAN, which is a public broadcast of what goes on in Congress and around the government. And I like history, so I just tuned into that. And there was a Rose Garden ceremony by President Trump on a report of a study that he had enacted on the first, I guess, weeks of his administration. And that report was about the opioid epidemic in the United States. And I really wasn't aware that there was an opioid epidemic. So I listened to it. And when I listened to it, I pulled down the report and I read it. And I called my wife and I said, I just read this report. And I listened to President Trump give his summation of it. And uh, it scared the hell out of me. And when I read the report, it actually just concluded the fact that I was killing myself. And so she says, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to get off." She says, "How are you going to do that?" I says, I don't have a clue." I said, "I've got so much opioids going into me that I really didn't know how dangerous they were, but they're killing me. My blood pressure is so severely low at that point that and my pulse and my breathing had been slowed down by the years of taking this drug. And so I said that I got to figure a way out. And so we did on the pills, like we explained earlier, and then we did the barrier approach to the patch. And what they saw was a rebirth. And a lot of friends said the same thing as you man, you look good, What are you doing? And I said, I'm off opioids, or I'm getting off opioids. And they said, how are you doing it? And I would explain. And one guy I explained to was an engineer, and he said, well, show me how you're doing it. So I showed him, and he says, that can save a lot of lives for a lot of people. He says, you ought to get in touch with insurance companies or pharmaceuticals because they'd love this technology you've developed. And so that story ran with me, took me home, and I wrote a letter to the then director of our National Institute of Health, Francis Collins. I sent him an email letter, and surprisingly, 20 minutes later, he called me. And you got to remember, this guy's pretty big in the National Institute of Health. And I'm just a guy sitting in the mountains of central Virginia. So his cause to call me was, as a quote that he made to me was, I'm calling you because I've never received a solution to a national epidemic from a patient before. And I want to talk to you about what you're doing. And so he gave me some ideas. He told me to get it into the National Institute of Drug Abuse, let them look at it because we needed to get this on the market as soon as possible. And he also told me to file for patent protection so that nobody would steal it. So I've done all that. And so we're here now getting ready to go to market.
Mm. So during the early creation phases of FenBlock, what were some of the barriers that you came into that kind of did, well, because they obviously didn't push you off that path because you're here now with the FDA telling you that it's not anything like they've seen before. So what were some of the barriers that sort of pushed you away from it, which you were able to get back on with?
Well, the difficulty was trying to convince somebody that it works.
Mm.
The other difficult part was to find the right material. That when you presented these things to a doctor, they knew that what you did with the material, because of its attributes of that material design, made sense that it would block what you wanted to block, and the the output of that was a level of confidence, that I was on the right path. Some of the barriers were not just acceptance of the idea, but uh, you got to find people who want to get off. Number one, in this stage of it, I'm always told that you wanted to get off. You got to find somebody like yourself. And I said, yeah, I think that's true. Once my story gets out, and other stories pick up on people who want to get off, then it becomes a contagious situation where, you and I are talking, and you find out that it worked for Neil, and so you got a friend or relative that's dealing with the same thing. Well, you're something positive because there's no danger in what you're doing with FenBlock. There is danger in a lot of the options, which are alternative drugs. So when do you get off of that? Rehabilitative services. The recidivism rates for that are too high. It's like a waste of money. And then there's other things of brain modulation and things like that they come with their own cost of risk, and they come with very high, expensive costs to the individual, which are not necessarily covered by insurance in the United States. So I came in between all that stuff, and my cost to this product for a person is really relatively low. It's it'll be very affordable. And so the barriers are trying to get it to a point where it's affordable, it works, and the confidence of the community will support that. That's where you're stepping up to get to that level.
Yeah. I think it's important to point out with this as well the cost of alternatives. So when we're talking about rehab and things like that, a rehab in the US is, say, on average, what, about $40,000 a month to use the facilities of a rehab.
It depends. Like if you're in the central part of Virginia where I'm at, it's about 8,000. But if you go to say a major, in Central Virginia where I'm at, it'll run about $8,000 a month. And across the country, it varies based on the ability to pay. Large cities are expensive. They'll run 30,000, and then upwards in the real exclusive areas of our country, it could be as high as $80,000 a month.
Okay, yeah,
So we'll run about maybe 600, something like that. And the argument for that is you're solving a $200 a day problem for $600 a month.
yeah. And let's be honest, as much as people are going to complain about the cost of $600 a month, it's still much more affordable than sending someone to a rehab. I mean, there's one near me. I'm not going to say the name of it, obviously, because it's give away the location, but it's, I think, around £18,000 per month. It's a high end one, but again, most of the population who are addicted to these drugs can't afford to be sending people like family members and themselves to these kind of places. So to have an option which is much more affordable, and am I right in saying would be able in the US to get it through insurance? Is that the idea to go with?
Yeah, we're having meetings coming up with what we call as payers, and to find the channel, the proper channels into the insurance companies, and it's all dependent too. I mean, it's going to be a lot easier to get to a payer for their support when you have the FDA's approval of the product. Okay, I don't think it's an element that they'll classify as experimental because it's such a low risk. It's not like heart surgery in a different way that once they get approval by the FDA, the insurance companies will classify, well, that's still experimental until X number of things happen. Well, the reason they're doing that is, it's a $100,000 surgery. You're talking about a $600 product, right? So maybe not even that much. We haven't really set a price on it. So, the argument of return on their investment is considerably high. And so their risk of loss in the use of this product is, I think, absolutely zero.
How did you get buy-in, the initial buy-in from people who are around you now who are supporting the product and hoping to get it to market?
They knew me. Many cases, the initial players were the people I would speak to you about recognizing a declining person and then reemerging a more healthy person again. And so they were basically my team that audited me as I went through one cycle to the next. From that, when I would go for my annual cancer test, to make sure that I didn't have any cancer again. It was that oncologist that really gave me the support and said, I think this thing is really considerable. And I think you saw the letter from Dr. Thompson about the product. But yeah, it didn't happen all at one time. You've got to be persistent. They've got to understand that this is real, that it did work. Have a chance to examine what you've been saying over a period of time, and build upon them. The confidence of what you're trying to put together has a sound basis to it. So it starts out with friends, family, giving you confidence of what you've done, and then turn into the fact, well, prove it to somebody like you, Ethan, that it actually worked. So we're 5 years into this process, and now I've met you, and so the networking and things like that continues, and that's very important.
Yeah, it was very lucky that I stumbled across you on LinkedIn when the Brian Townsend episode released, and I'd had a look. I think I'd had a look at who commented or who had reposted the video, and you were one of them. And I saw in your profile that you were the creator of FenBlock, and I was interested. I was like, oh, what's that? And yeah, now we're having this conversation, and I think it's one of the most powerful things that could come to market in the next few years in terms of helping just end, not even necessarily end, helping reduce the severe numbers that we're seeing in terms of fentanyl deaths a year. Like I've got written down here, in 2021, there was 71,000 fentanyl deaths in the US alone. That is an incredible number of people. It's a football stadium's worth of people. And if we can reduce that number by even just 5, 10, 15%, that's a significant amount of people saved yearly.
Yeah. What I'll send you is a report that was released by the National Institute of Health just last week. And what's interesting about it is they talk about the failure of solving the fentanyl problem across the United States. And in their discussion of the failure components are the things we just talked about: alternative drugs and rehabilitative services. And the other components may even be, the brain modulation and things like that gets to the receptor sides of the brain and tries to throw some frequency and radiation at them to get them to, remove their cells that say, I need to have more and more and more, get it back to normal. What the NIH said is that they are looking that what needs to be discussed, what needs to be developed, is a tapering methodology that slowly gets a person off of fentanyl. They don't have a clue that I'm out here. Okay, they will in a few weeks. Okay, and what we did was we immediately turned around and wrote to the administrative director for our National Institute of Health and for the Federal Food and Drug Administration, that we are here. We have the answer to that, and it's basically going into FDA for approval this past week, and we've on we're beginning our discussions with them, and it's a serious submission. I mean, you're talking right now it'll be around $50,000 totals to date, and it may go up to $500,000, but we're in it. And what was interesting was anybody that has been following me and saw that report, they say, "Oh my golly, that's exactly what FenBlock does." So
Yeah.
we were ahead of our time.
Which is incredible. But in terms of the financials, as you've mentioned there, there's $50,000 that have gone into it already, and 500,000, which is a possibility over the course of the FDA approval. How is this all being funded? Is because I know myself that you've put a lot of money into this because you believe in the product so much, but to fund all of it is going to probably become quite problematic. So what are you doing in terms of funding to help get over the line?
Yeah, to give your listeners an idea is that besides the 50,000, that's just our submission fees for the Food and Drug Administration's evaluation. That's all that is. Prior to getting to the FDA, the total investment in the product is about $275,000. Of that, about 150 to 160,000 is mine. About 100,000 is from my orthopedic oncologist. So there's only two of us that are doing that. I'm in the process right now of transferring about another $100,000 of my own money into the business to offset what we expect to see as the FDA expenses, plus the hiring of consultants to help us work through the FDA, as it gets into the test side and clinic side. So that's where the money is going to really, you're going to burn a lot of cash.
Yeah, and I think it's good. It's just good to give people that perspective because it's all sunshine and rainbows talking about trying to get a product approved for market, but not understanding actually how much personal money is going into this. But also it tells a really great story of how invested you are in this product and how invested you are in seeing people's lives change for the better as well.
Yeah, well, that's true, and I hesitate to make them believe that I'm a wealthy guy. I'm not. I was bankrupt at the end of the cancer surgery. Okay, I had a 6,000 square foot home. I was making upwards of a couple $100,000 a year on my own. I didn't have insurance, so there's the story, right? So you get diagnosed with deadly cancer, right? So we lost our house. We're living in a nice apartment, but we're in an apartment. We went from 6,000 square foot to 1,300. And at 60, 62, so forth, you don't have access to your retirement in the United States, all right, without severe tax consequences, which would be penalties for invading your investment in your retirement. So I wasn't touching that. So we went through bankruptcy, and through that time period, I came across the age of 65. And at 65, I'm now, pretty well into the addiction, and there's a little bit of flow from retirement funds coming in. So I'm getting myself recovered, and then all of a sudden, this opportunity opens up, and I start thinking about getting the patents done, and so the patents in themselves cost $140,000. So there was three patents over a period of about a year and a half. And so where do you get that money? Well, I withdrew all my in the U.S. the private personal savings. It's called a 401k. That's gone. That's money's gone. Then I cashed in my pension program, and that's what I'm using right now. So yeah, I'm fully invested to help somebody else. It's not that because I say I got a couple 100,000 into this and I'm looking to go through another 100 that I'm a wealthy guy. I'm in it for keeps, and I'm in it so that somebody else gets the experience of of the benefits that I learned, and that's going to be a really a good, I guess, payback. So
Yeah.
it'll bring you say 360 degrees. It brings it right back to home. That's what I'm looking
Mm.
for.
So what does the timeline look like? The timeline look like for FenBlock, and when do you plan to, or at least hope to have it on the market?
Well, it's right now it's ready to go on the market. Okay, it's a product. It's produced. We just need to package it. That's the only outstanding challenge that's easily solved. Um, what we're doing through our congressional representatives is we're submitting a letter to the FDA for options for our patients or our clients under what uh, the Trump administration instituted what's called right to try. So that was really for life threatened cancer patients that were basically going to die. And there's experimental drugs out there that they normally wouldn't have access to because they're experimental. Uh, the laws were changed so that you have a right to try to save your life. And as Trump has said, is that saved tens of thousands of lives so far. So we're going to ask that our people have the access to uh, FenBlock while it's in the test, while it's going under clinical evaluation. And actually, the data that we would obtain from these people will become part of the clinical test. And so it'll serve two purposes. The second option that we're asking for is what's called emergency use authorization. That was created when they distributed the COVID vaccines. Okay, COVID vaccine was basically first tested on people, which normally that never happens, right? So the government forced us to take it, and in order to take it, we became part of the testing process itself. So emergency use said to the FDA is let this device called a vaccine go into the market untested, and will absolve the pharmaceuticals from any liability downstream because it's in an emergency. Well, the largest emergency in the United States based on epidemics right now is fentanyl. So our argument is we can save a life, and we're in an epidemic, and give our patients a chance to reach out and try this. So that's
Mm.
that's our motivation right now, and we'll do that in our plans are to address that and focus on two things: basically captured uh, patients, and you would find them in departments of corrections, that are coming into jail, and they're addicted and things like that. Where right now they're just forced into cold turkey. Now we have a way of managing them to get off of their addiction, and then in regards to like cancer patients and heart cardiac surgery patients, where you have a controlled point where the doctor wants to get them off of the fentanyl patch because that's a routine process of getting a fentanyl patch after those serious surgeries. So we're optimistic. To answer the first question you asked was what's our timeline? We'd say 6 months is the optimum, maybe 12 as the pessimistic side.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a long time to go, but it's definitely worth the wait for
Yeah.
obviously getting it on the market and stuff.
Yeah, but you got that stopgap there. You can go into the emergency use or right to try. And I think once that catches on, maybe the pressure will be, that experience is basically certifying my claims that it's easy, it's safe, that kind of stuff, and it might expedite evaluation and reduce the scope of clinicals required by the FDA, which would expedite the marketability of the product.
Yeah. You're not. The thing is, as well, you're not just looking to enter the US market with this. You want to go worldwide. So, what's the plan with that, and how are you planning to attack that as a strategy?
Well, we're looking at certainly you to help us in getting this thing into the European market, the Australian market. We have been talking to the Ministry of Health in Canada, so we're anxiously looking for the right.
Just to jump in, rapid. Remember to like, subscribe, share the podcast. Also rate it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as that just helps to push the podcast to new listeners who may be interested in it. They might not be, but please do that because it helps me. So yeah, enjoy the rest of the episode. Finally back, and we are going again. So,
Okay.
Neil, let's get
Right.
it right this time. So, the international market you're planning to tackle. So, how are you and FenBlock planning to do that and planning to saturate the market with your product?
Well, one good example, Ethan, is the connections with you, and that we really believe in talking to people initially and getting them to understand what we've done, what we can do together, and your feedback as to helping us with our next steps. So, for example, working with you to get into the UK and the Commonwealth countries around the world certainly is a high priority. Okay, so as that information also starts to grow in success, we'll find our way into other countries, and I think through your broadcast and things, interest should be growing. And if we plant a seed somewhere, then we all don't have the greatest of participation in our podcast, as we really we don't have the tens of millions of people watching it. It'll start to grow though. The seed will work, and we'll together, from our experience of how we're experiencing us getting into different markets, we'll be able to do it in the most more effective and efficient way. So we're counting on people like yourself to get us in the conversation, from the conversation into the test, into the test to help us navigate how we get into the government approval processes and things like that. Because I wasn't born to do this. I was a bank auditor for years, and so this is all new. So I need help, and that's really the fun part of it.
Mm. What I'm interested in hearing as well is how you got the likes of Mike Brown on board, because for Mike Brown's going to be on an episode next week, so he'll be coming out the week after you. But for those who don't know, Mike Brown is a DEA agent who's spent over a decade looking into drug trafficking. He spent time abroad in Pakistan and places like that where the productions of drugs and sale of drugs are rife. And he is obviously an expert in the field of opioids. So how did you get the likes of him and others, who say Brian Townsend, who you do know, to sort of back the product?
It all comes through the app LinkedIn, where we've made our links. On the case of Mike Brown, he again was perusing through the internet, and I think he's always looking, as he called it, an off ramp solution that's different, that would work for his concerns on the fentanyl drugs. And he came across my website, went in, looked at it, and said, "This is the off ramp that they've been looking for." We're limited right now because we're focused on prescribed. That was our initial mission. Once we get into the mission is marketable, that'll fund on strengthening on the illicit drugs. But we do know that we can take and transition people off of illicit fentanyl to a fentanyl patch, from the fentanyl patch using the FenBlock technology, barrier technology, get them to wean themselves off of that in a safe way. So it'll work. So Mike found me just pretty much like you did. He was very, very captured by what he read and what he talked to me about. He's had me on a podcast, and soon thereafter, he became a very important advisor for me going forward. And his focus is on certainly the narcotic problems out in the world, not just on prescribed fentanyl. So he's the type of person I need to lead that side of the market opportunities. So that's where we are, and we look forward to him helping us do that.
Yeah, no, I think that some of the people that you've got on board with the project are incredible in terms of the caliber that they bring to such a novel. Well, novel, is novel the right word?
Yeah.
Subject. Yeah, they bring a lot of knowledge to the field, and I think it's really going to set you apart from anyone else who's who's maybe trying to compete in the market. But
Yeah, as you start a business like this in healthcare, um, really the team behind it, which they say the outside investor looks at, is what's going to be your management team. Okay, that team of advisors has shifted. If you go back 4 years ago when I started the business plan, uh, there's only a couple people that are still on that list of advisors that were on the initial list. Okay, because I knew that I had one person tell me you need to strengthen your advisor team, and so we went and got pharmacists, we got scientists on there, addiction science, addiction medicine. We got rehabilitative service people on there. We've got medical doctors, and we're even talking to actually I guess you would call them I don't know what you call them in Europe, but they're undertakers. They take care of you at death,
yep,
and so what his background will help us with is dealing with people at times of severe loss in their family, surprising loss. So he has to, his home, his funeral home has to deal with these, especially young kids, on too regular of a basis. So his input to us and how we counsel our clients and how we put this out on the market to help save those lives, even though it's kind of like that's really a far reach. No, it's a very important understanding of the impact that these drugs have across our country. So we've got a really variety of very highly skilled people now that work with me.
yeah,
And
yeah,
Mike Brown, and now yourself. We built a good team.
mm, yeah. Only to get bigger and better as well.
That's keep it. We want to keep it manageable. There's a lot of people that would like to join and be a part of this, but we'll see as we get bigger. As we get more successful.
Yeah, yeah. What What are the main things that you've learned during this process? Because as you said, you were a bank auditor as your career. You weren't in the medical field at all. So what are the main things you've taken away from this process?
Well, you have to be open to criticism. You've got to be, you're going to challenge you on your credentials. A lot of times, a person or an investor would say to me, "Is what gives you the experience to understand, drug addiction?" And I said, "Well, I've been an addict."
Mm,
I would throw it right back at him and say, well, what gives you the right to tell me that I don't have any experience in it? But yeah, you're always challenged. There's a lot of people out there that doubt that of your sincerity and persistence, continuity of your mission, your statements, your conversations with others. That'll win over people, and you can't be deterred by people shutting the door on you. Out of a normal sales cycle, you knock on 100 doors, one door will answer. Out of those 100 of those doors that answer, 10 may become a customer. So you really got to just stick with it, and it's not easy. But I've never kind of doubted that I wanted to keep moving forward, even though a lot of times I've had people say, you should either sell the technology, the intellectual property, the patents, you sell those and get out. Why do you want to produce this? Well, I mean, if I don't produce it, my fear is that, let's say, a pharmaceutical will buy this and put it on the shelf because it basically goes against them selling pain medication or opioids in any
yeah,
form. And so, they're not going to be so happy to see somebody come on board in their companies that turn down their profit line. So
mm,
there's a lot of pressure, and in politics itself, there's a lot of pressure against this, even though you think that they would be happy to endorse it. Um, no, I haven't found a politician yet that's happy to endorse it. They like the concept as long as it gets them reelected.
yeah. I think it's interesting as well to point out that, well, like you said there, if a pharmaceutical company was to buy it, it's very unlikely they would put it on the market, because that would then negatively affect their profit lines from the drugs that they're producing and selling. So if you go back to Purdue Pharma and we talk about them, their their philosophy was, we want to end pain, and they want to stop pain before we get to the customer. Um, and it's interesting because, so I had surgery on my foot in 2020, and I remember coming out of surgery and they tried to prescribe me codeine. And when I was prescribed the codeine, I said, I don't need it, I'm not in pain. And they said, but you don't want to be in pain. You want to avoid the pain, so start taking it now. And to me, that was crazy, because they were trying to mask the pain and then me never feel the pain. So I don't understand what the pain feels like. So I feel like that legacy from these pharmaceutical companies of, let's avoid pain, let's end pain, is still going on today, even though the likes of Purdue Pharma, they've been outed as this horrendous company who lied and told people less than 1% of people got addicted to oxycodone, and it was 10 times, even more higher than that, which is what is crazy to me, the fact that this legacy is still going today.
Yeah, it just transitions into other drugs, and the practice becomes the same. When I was, and a lot of people before surgery, they're given a fentanyl tablet or a hydrocodone tablet, something like that. You're supposed that once you get through the surgery, wherever minor it is or what major it may be, you don't reflect on pain. But one of the things that they have to really address is that they have a doctor has no way to tell that you're telling the truth, because nobody knows what pain is until they experience it. So every day for 7 months, I was in the hospital every day. They would ask me what my pain level was, and the score was to take it from 1, no pain, to 10, chronic pain. Um, I knew that if I went to a 5, I wouldn't get but half the dosage that I wanted to get. Okay, because I was already into this deal. I didn't want to experience pain. So I would always say 20. And they'd say 20. Oh, no, we stop at 10. I said, well, if you stop at 10, I'm going to 20. So I'd always told them that I was having pain, but I never was. I just wanted to make sure that that time when I asked for pain medication that day, they would have already approved it. So I didn't want to have any hesitation in receiving the pain medication if I needed it. And if I was dropped down to a different score in the morning, I wouldn't get the same amount of relief in medication. So I was already, basically thinking through the fact is that I'm into this and I don't want to get out of it. And so they've already got you trapped before you go home.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out there as well that these doctors, although there are some terrible ones, like for example the woman on The Pharmacist, the documentary, the woman who was prescribing hundreds of thousands of pills, and she just was ready to hand them out to whoever came by. But there are a lot of doctors where they do have a patient's best interests at heart, but because pain is subjective, it's so hard for them to see whether they are actually in pain or not, because if someone comes in and says they're in pain, they kind of just have to believe the person unless they're seeing the addictive tendencies. It could be a functioning addict who's coming into their doctor's office and saying, I need pain medication, I'm a 20 out of 10 pain. But because they aren't showing those signs of addiction, they have to kind of give it to them. They can't really say no, because if they don't, then it could be deemed unethical.
Yeah, that's true. That's the problem that the doctors have to deal with. And I don't know what the solution is. There has to be a way of somehow measuring pain in a quantitative way, and it's hard. It's difficult for them. So that's something that I took advantage of. I also took advantage of hoarding drugs. I would increase the prescription renewal at times that were kind of like surprise to my doctor. I need some more, so he would authorize a renewal earlier than normal, and those early renewals just basically took the pills and hoarded them. And
Mm.
so at the end of my 7 years of manipulating the program. I had hundreds of hydromorphine pills. I had 50, 60 pills of hydrocodone, and I had about 70 patches of fentanyl. And
Wow.
yeah, so I have, you hoard, people hoard. So there has to be more control. And I've got ideas on how to fix that. But because of the practice I went through and the fact that I'm pretty much a pretty good auditor, I was looking at the weaknesses in their systems of control. And
Mm.
I've pointed out some really significant areas where we get in front of the pharmaceutical industry. We need to change some of their practices.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely an interesting point. What are some of those practices that you believe should be changed?
It's a relationship to pharmaceutical with the insurance company. Uh, if you go and you have a renewed prescription, say for tomorrow, uh, you could have gotten that prescription renewed 3 days earlier or 4 days earlier. The insurance company would pay for that. At that point, they don't pay for it at the day it's supposed to be renewed. They pay 3 to 4 days, maybe a week before. Okay, so you play with those terms, and you start to, you say now you're 4 days ahead for your second renewal. All right, now you go to 4 days ahead of that day. Now you're 8 days ahead. That's 8 days of medication. Okay, so you start hoarding those 8 days. All right, it becomes a tremendous amount of volume that you're able to hoard, put aside because you're already adequately you're adequate in the amount of medication that you've got. You're just making it come quicker, and you don't need it, so you put it aside. So over those 7 years, that's how I did that. I just kept going early, going early. And you say 3 or 4 days, that doesn't sound like much, but over 7 years, every month getting a renewal, that's a significant amount of change. You're able to capture and put aside, and you could sell it. You do anything you want. Nobody follows up on that. So they need to make those renewal things more rigid.
Mm. Yeah, I to be honest, I think where we've what we've discussed and what we've gone through is has been absolutely incredible. I think we've really delved into what you're trying to do and your philosophy behind what you're doing, and I think it's been great. But there's one question that I always end with every guest that I do have on, and that is, how would you like to be remembered?
Oh, it's just an inventor,
Okay, love it.
and a solid parent, grandparent, and
Mm,
that's pretty much it. That's a good achievement. You know,
amazing.
the fact is that the invention side of it is incredibly exciting to me because I never thought I would ever do anything like that. So I'm kind of happy with that.
Yeah, no, it's amazing what you're doing, and I really appreciate you coming on. Let everyone know where they can find you. Obviously, if you've got any correspondence in terms of you've got any questions about FenBlock, they can come to me through my email for the podcast. But also yourself, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, they want to offer their support or what have you, how can they get in touch with you?
Do you want me to
Yeah,
say my
your email or whatever, like whatever you're willing to give to people.
website is FenBlock Med, FenBlock med.com. And my email address is neil at FenBlockMed.com.
Okay.
And the website has all the contact information on it. So you're welcome to go to that. And then for anyone, I would suggest you get in touch with Ethan, and we'll work with you together to answer all your questions.
Yeah, amazing. Appreciate you coming on.
All right, Ethan, take care. Have a good one.
Hope you enjoyed that episode with Neil Jackson. He's an amazing guy, and I really loved having a conversation with him. He's very insightful, very open and honest about his addiction and the problems he's faced and how it affected his family. So yeah, leave your comments down below if you've got any questions for Neil or for myself about the episode. And over the next 2 weeks, there's going to be 2 more episodes to do with the opioid crisis, as I find it a personally fascinating topic. So I'll be having on Mike Brown, who is a former DEA agent who has worked abroad in Pakistan, Myanmar, and all sorts of countries, and also Danielle Burke, who is a former addict herself and now social worker. So look forward to them coming out, and I will see you next week for another episode.